Too Many Losing Heroines is one of the biggest hits of this season. The series is currently sitting at an 81% on AniList and an 8.34 on Myanimelist. In today's video, I wanted to share my thoughts on the show so far, as well as highlight some of the mixed and negative reviews I've come across on Mao. I've been very busy as of late working on multiple videos, so I decided to hire a professional to narrate my script to lighten the load a bit. Before I tackle the user reviews, here's what I thought about the first 6 episodes of the anime.
Makeine, Too Many Losing Heroines is a rom-com anime, based on a light novel series by Otaku Amamori. The show is centered around a book-loving loner named Kazuhiko Nukumizu, who befriends 3 girls that get rejected by their respective crushes. His life quickly becomes intertwined with theirs as the trio struggles to move on from the person that they fell in love with. The 3 losing heroines, Anna, Lemon, and Komori, soon find companionship and emotional support alongside Kazuhiko as part of their school's literary club. The show kicks off with Kazuhiko witnessing Anna Yanami getting rejected by her childhood friend Sosuke at a local restaurant. Once she notices Kazuhiko looking at her drinking off Sosuke's straw, Anna comes over to him and proceeds to vent about Sosuke and her friend Karen. Her introduction is far from graceful, and I was ultimately left with a negative first impression of the character by the end of the premiere. Look, I get that she's upset about the boy she likes choosing to be with her friend, but she came across as very obnoxious in this scene. She's being way too overdramatic on top of being loud and inconsiderate to Kazuhiko, who's basically forced to put up with her at this point. Unfortunately, there's another restaurant scene in episode 5, where her behavior is even worse. These sequences do a great job of painting her in the worst light possible, highlighting how Anna can be quite irritable and discourteous at times. She also comes across as very self-centered during the various scenes where her and Kazuhiko eat lunch together on the staircase. Anna begins making him meals every day in order to offset the debt she incurred from ordering a bunch of food that he had to pay for. The author makes use of the typical big eater trope with this character, which mostly comes off like a lazy attempt to make her more endearing and memorable. I think it works in the context of the first restaurant scene, as she's angry and sad about getting rejected. So in a way, it's like she's stress eating. Outside of that though, I think it's overused, to the point where it becomes one of the main defining traits of the character, nearly overshadowing what good qualities that are left. I've seen the whole cute girl with a big appetite thing handled much better in other rom-com series lately. When utilized effectively, this trope can add more personality to a character, and make him more charming to the audience. In this case though, Anna's gluttonous behavior just kinda irked me. Like, we get it, you love food. Although this character can be unlikable at times, she became more tolerable as the series progressed, and other sides of her personality were allowed to flourish. Anna started to remind me a bit of Aqua from Konosuba, due to how dim-witted and ill-mannered she is. There's something about the confidence she exhibits while making stupid statements in a few scenes that instantly made me think of that character. Anyway, the other 2 female leads, Lemon Yakashiro and Chika Komori, are much more likable and are a nice contrast to one another. Whereas Lemon's pretty sociable, energetic, and playful, Chika's an introvert and quite timid. Although Lemon's my favorite out of the 3 heroines, Chika's arguably the best character out of the main cast. She's relatable and has the strongest characterization from what I can tell so far. It's very apparent from how Chika behaves that she suffers from social anxiety. She stutters frequently or gets so nervous that she sometimes communicates her thoughts through text on her phone. It's easy to see why some fans may like her over Anna or Lemon. I personally think that some of her best scenes have been when she's alone with Kazuhiko. She really seems to come out of her shell around him and Lit Club's vice president, Koto Tsukinoki. Unfortunately for her, Koto is also in love with the club's president. As for Lemon, similar to Anna, she's in love with her childhood friend, Mitsuki Ayano, which is something that they bond over immediately. Compared to the 3 main girls, Kazuhiko's kind of a dull character. There's just not really anything interesting about him, and he doesn't stand out much as a male rom-com lead. I wouldn't go as far to say his personality's totally bland though, as there were a handful of internal lines and reactions from him that got a chuckle out of me. That said, Kazuhiko's a pretty forgettable protagonist who doesn't have much going on with him most of the time. The brief conflict between him and Anna in the 4th episode is honestly the only noteworthy thing directly involving him so far. To be honest, the show's cast isn't very compelling or complex. While the characters are generally fun and quirky, they're also kinda shallow. The second half of the season could prove me wrong, but as of right now, they don't seem to have any layers that need to be peeled back. At the very least, the writing for the characters is solid, and they function well within the story Amamori's trying to tell. Regardless, I'm sure these characters will appeal to a lot of people, but for me personally, I wasn't too crazy about the cast. There were a couple of supporting characters that stood out to me, like Kazuhiko's over-enthusiastic homeroom teacher, Konami Amanatsu, as well as Yumiko Shikiya, the creepy gal chick from the student council. Yumiko's hands down the most unique character from this series, and is my personal favorite. She's so freaking odd, and given her gyaru aesthetic, you'd probably expect her to have a more peppy, carefree personality. I appreciate that the author went against expectations, and I like how she's introduced. Katsuhiko's reactions to her have been quite amusing. I really hope Yumiko gets more screen time in the latter part of the season, as she's only had a couple of brief appearances so far. Despite how short her scenes were, they left a big impression on me, and they even felt more inspired than most of the other lighthearted scenes in the show. The comedy is fine for the most part, although there were certain gags that definitely won't work for everybody. There's a few gay jokes, one of which involving BL manga, that weren't funny at all. It was just kinda weird. Moreover, there were a couple of scenes in episode 6 that I think were added to even out the tone, that probably could have just been cut to improve the pacing. Although there's plenty of humorous moments throughout the season's first half, I wouldn't classify any of them as being hilarious. This anime has very few comedic sequences that are thoughtful and well crafted. The humor is fairly simple, with a lot of laughs coming from the often playful character interactions. Generally speaking, there's very little ingenuity in regards to Amamori's writing and Shotaro Kitamoto's directing. To their credit, there's a couple great dramatic and emotional scenes that are well executed. Even so, I've yet to be blown away by how the characters were written or how a sequence was handled. I'll reserve judgment in regards to the narrative for now, but the author doesn't seem to have anything too profound to say about unrequited love. The most remarkable aspects of this series are without a doubt its primary setting and the top-notch production. The rundown school that Kazuhiko and the girls attend is one of the few very unique elements in the show that actually grab my attention. Usually the schools in this type of anime look pristine and seem well maintained, but in this case, the campus is a shabby mess. Production-wise, A1 Pictures has done a phenomenal job bringing Amamori's work to life. The animation quality is almost on par with a full-length movie and has been consistently smooth. Also, the skillful camera work really helps enhance certain scenes that honestly would have been drab otherwise. As it stands, Makine Too Many Losing Heroines is a pretty decent show that many fans of the genre are likely to appreciate. It's got a likable cast, a refreshing school setting, and the animation is top-notch. Unfortunately, the writing and directing's a bit sterile, and the characters seem kinda flat. Hopefully, the latter half of the season fleshes the cast out more.
Alright, so before we move on, I just want to thank OtakuVA for taking the time to narrate my script. Now with that out of the way, let's check out some of the user reviews. The reception has been mostly positive, but I'm always interested in seeing a different perspective from the norm. Alright, so the first review is from ArmyCat23, so he praised the art and the character designs. I assume he also liked the animation as well. He mentions the side characters being very entertaining, with his main criticisms being that Kazuhiko is a wooden character and that the narrative feels aimless and unsatisfying. I think this was a fair review. I think he makes a good point about Kazuhiko potentially going after one of the girls being problematic. I assume he'll eventually fall for Anna. I think there were signs of that in episode 4. There was that scene in the classroom where he's staring a hole in the back of her head. But yeah, I do agree that a confession scene would feel a bit hollow, at least at this time. So I get where he's coming from when he says that it'll feel forced if Kazuhiko suddenly confessed to one of the girls, as he's barely had an impact on them. Alright, so this next review is from H. Barca, who gave it a 4. He thought it was enjoyable at the start, but ultimately the novelty of the premise wore off pretty quickly for him. He criticized the characters for their lack of motivation, for which I will say that this sentiment rings true for Kazuhiko, but a lot less so for Anna and the girls. He also acknowledged how good the production is, but sees it as just window dressing with nothing behind it. I'll say this, I get where he's coming from, as I thought that there was a lack of depth with the story and characters too. Fortunately though, the high production values compensate for that quite a bit. While I understand this person's perspective, I can't co-sign that score at all. A 4 is way too low in my opinion. This next review is from Badass, who gave the show a 6. He enjoyed the first 3 episodes and thought the premise was solid, but eventually found the story dull and repetitive. I don't entirely agree with the critique that the story is repetitive. I mean, the whole concept of the show is based around the girls getting rejected, and it's not even handled the same exact way each time. He then criticizes the protagonist for being bland and not really doing anything, basically questioning his existence in the narrative. So this part of his review cracked me up when I first read it. He compares Kazuhiko to a beige wall. I totally agree, he's not a very interesting character, and is mostly passive in most situations. He's likely meant to be a self-insert character for the audience, though I wouldn't say he's completely devoid of personality. Aside from the gripes about Kazuhiko, he thought the slice-of-life comedy aspect was decent, and that Komori carries the show. But then he claims there's no drama, which just isn't accurate at all. Big emotional scenes like the one with Anna, Sosuke, and Kazuhiko are few and far between, but it's there. Alright, so up next, we'll check out a couple negative reviews. So this first one comes from Forgiven2222W, who I can only assume drank a whole gallon of Haterade before typing his review because he gave the show a 1. He claims that the plot is repetitive, plotting, and that every episode feels like padded out filler. I disagree with this point entirely. Pacing wise, this anime doesn't seem slow at all. Something significant happens just about every episode, so saying that each one is like filler is ridiculous. I think the main issue is the stagnant character progression. On that note, he does criticize Kazuhiko's lack of character growth and agency in the story. He also gave the series its props for the animation quality, but believes it's used to obscure the shallowness of its narrative. Visuals are pretty, but there's nothing of substance underneath. From what I've seen so far, I can understand why someone would think this anime is getting by solely due to the quality of its production and not on the merit of its writing. This was something that I thought about weeks ago. However, this show's also got an appealing cast to fall back on, so it's definitely not just the pretty visuals that have drawn everyone in. The beginning of the final paragraph is where he completely lost me. This just doesn't make any sense. What final twist? We're not even at the end of the season yet. What the heck is this guy talking about? Yumiko is just a gag character. Her interactions with Kazuhiko are meant to be humorous little moments and nothing more. This review honestly comes off as a blatant attempt to trash this anime. The final review we're going to look at is from Devin McEdge, who gave the show a 4. Similar to Vadas and H. Barca, he thought it had a strong start with the premiere. However, he criticized the 3 losing heroines for being too tropey, lacking depth, and having zero chemistry with Kazuhiko or the person they're in love with. These are pretty valid points. Amori definitely overused the whole bottomless pit trope with Anna to the extent it got stale and annoying. As for the lack of chemistry, well, sure, I mean the relationships are weak and underdeveloped. At least in the first half. Komori's the only one who's made it clear why she fell for the guy she likes. That aside, Devin also thinks that Kazuhiko is a dull character who doesn't drive the plot forward and only serves as a voice of reason for his friends. This is very true. Kazuhiko simply goes with the flow and doesn't do much. But then again, he only sees himself as a background character in a girl's failed love story, so he rarely jumps into action. Overall, I think this is a fair review, although I think the score is way too low. And with that said, we reached the end of the video. Let me know in the comment section below whether you'd like to see some more content like this. I would love to do more in the future. Also, leave your thoughts on this anime in the comment section below as well. And as always, thanks for watching.